The proposed real estate transfer tax in Chicago, which would have been used to pay for homelessness programs, including those for recent border crossers, failed at the polls. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News.
This is not the result that we wanted. It is devastating.
It's also back to the drawing board for architects of the effort that critics say was vague on where the money would go.
Tonight is a gateway to a new future for our city.
Politically, questions swirling now over whether this signals voters are cooling off on the progressive wave that helped usher Mayor Johnson into office.
It's certainly pumped the brakes on the mayor's agenda. It's been aggressive against the business community here, and some would say we have a hostile business environment in Chicago as a result.
Alderman Riley says the business community breathing a sigh of relief after the referendum. One of the mayor's signature campaign promises appears to have failed.
No one said it was going to be easy, but the fact of the matter is, in this moment, you have very low turnout.
Johnson says the rules limiting how he could campaign for the referendum limited his ability to push back on opponents who used the mayor as a reason to vote no.
I wanted to campaign more, man. Come on, man. I wanted to be out there. You all know I'm a gamer. Heck yeah, I wanted to be out there. That sucked when you're a gamer and you knock down shots and you can't be out on the court.
So what's next? A similar effort cannot appear on the ballot in November as the city rules require a cooling off period.
All right, so I have some good news for landlords and real estate investors in the city of Chicago. The proposed real estate transfer tax has failed, okay? I'm actually kind of surprised about this because Chicago is probably a majority renter city. So you would think that, oh, well, you know what? People are, they're going to try to stick it to the landlords. They're going to try to stick it to the wealthy by forcing this tax down there, down on those people, right? But the voters have spoken, okay? And from what I'm hearing, a lot of renters realize that, hey, the landlords are going to pass the cost of this transfer tax on to them, which could lead to higher rents. So they were voting against it because of that. Not only that, but you know what? They said that this tax was going to pay for programs to support homelessness, right? And a lot of people are pretty fed up with the hundreds of millions of dollars they're spending to provide free housing to these recent border crossers from Venezuela, Guatemala, etc. Okay, so you know what? I don't think that people think it's a good idea to tax themselves to pay so that we can house the world population. This is my big gripe with all of this, okay? They say that, oh yeah, all the migrants, they're talking about how they are evicted migrants and all this crap, right? And how they're spending hundreds of millions of dollars supporting these people, who are essentially homeless, mind you. And then they say, oh, well, in order to pay for this, we're going to tax ourselves even more. Ridiculous, okay? You don't want to chase out the wealthy people. You don't want to chase out the business owners. And that's exactly what this tax would have done. So before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like, subscribe button, maybe leave a comment down below and let me know what you think. Are you surprised that the people of the city of Chicago, they chose to turn this sort of thing down, okay? I'm kind of surprised, honestly. I don't know the true motivations, but I do know one thing, right? This election, it being a kind of odd time, that allowed the more moderate leaning, I'm not going to say conservative, but the more moderate leaning people within the city of Chicago had more power during this sort of election than they would during like the presidential election, okay? So they were able to make their voices heard and didn't pass a new tax increase. The last thing I want is for the government to get more tax money. Okay, they don't know how to spend the money they got now. They're wasting hundreds of millions of dollars already, and yet they want to basically rob landlords, property owners, wealthy people of additional money. Give me a break. For what? That's the real question. Will this actually help the homelessness problem? No. But it will pay for a bunch of recent border crossers to be able to stay in, 5-star hotels. Anyway, let's get into this article and see what it says. This article is coming from CBSNews.com, and it says, apparent failure of Bring Chicago Home tax referendum may slow Mayor Johnson's agenda, critics say. Yeah, and the agenda of this far left socialist mayor is basically he wants to socialize the entire system or tax us to death or whatever. Anyway, let's see what the article says. Critics of the Bring Chicago Home ballot referendum said Chicago's business community was breathing a sigh of relief Wednesday, a day after the referendum apparently failed at the polls. While votes were still being counted late Wednesday, it appears the effort to raise the transfer tax on million-dollar homes to fight homelessness was defeated. The latest update shows 54% of Chicago voters cast their ballots against the proposal. The Bring Chicago Home referendum was a marquee initiative of Mayor Brandon Johnson and his progressive allies on the city council in an effort to raise more money to fight homelessness. You know, I noticed that there's always this huge push to fight homelessness, and what you'll see in, especially in California, right, is that no matter how much money they throw at the problem, it doesn't solve the problem. Instead, it seems that the number of homeless people seems to go up. Isn't that kind of weird how that works out? So simply giving people homes doesn't solve the problem, because a lot of the homelessness issue we're seeing is caused by other things, okay? Are we talking about we have, a lot of people who are sleeping on the streets who are suffering from mental health conditions, people suffering from substance abuse conditions, and people who just choose to live out there, okay? So throwing money at the problem doesn't resolve that issue. Now, providing homeless funds to people who actually want to be helped, who don't want to be living on the street, who don't have substance abuse issues, etc., that will help them, right? But that will be a small temporary allocation of money, in my opinion, okay, at most. And I'm not for saying, okay, we're going to permanently subsidize these people's housing. We're going to permanently provide these people with money and housing because they are unwilling to take care of themselves. If that's my personal opinion. So yeah, I mean, just like all of these socialist programs, if they are in place, right, which in a lot of cases, I don't believe a lot of these programs are necessary, but if they are in place, they should be short-term and temporary measures to help people get back on their feet, period. Okay? Anything more than that, and you're creating a system of dependence. But, creating a tax, and this is my big problem, right? You are throwing tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars that you are sucking away from businesses within the city at the problem, and it will not actually resolve the problem. This is not the result that we wanted, said Alderman Carlos Ramirez Rosa. It is devastating. The measure asked voters to authorize the city council to increase the real estate transfer tax on the sales of properties for $1 million or more in Chicago, while lowering the tax rate for less expensive properties. The transfer tax for properties valued at less than $1 million would drop from 0.75% to 0.60%. Property sold for between $1 million and $1.5 million would pay a 2% transfer tax, nearly triple the current rate. Property sold for $1.5 million or more would pay a 3% transfer tax, 4 times the current rate. So yeah, people were getting triple or quadruple tax increases based on this proposal. Meanwhile, obviously they did a tax cut on the less expensive properties, trying to garner votes to get this thing passed. Now, my personal opinion is that this was an attack on the wealthy. That's what they were trying to do. Like in California, they actually called it a very similar tax. They called it the mansion tax because they were going after those people who own those big mansions up there, and in Chicago, there are a lot, housing is a lot less expensive than it is in like Los Angeles, right? But there are so many businesses that are in buildings that are over $1 million. There are large apartment complexes that are valued at, multiple millions of dollars. And so the properties would have, especially the rental properties, the landlords would have been passing the cost of these taxes down to the tenants, right? And that is something that a lot of people don't realize. They think that, the landlords are just going to eat this loss. No. of course we're going to pass the cost down to the tenants, right? And that's going to lead to higher rents, not just for residential tenants, also for commercial tenants, because this tax hits all properties. And you know the other thing, the part of the tax that is the most unfair? No, I mean, the tax is not fair at all, but the part that's the most unfair is that even if you are selling your property at a loss, okay, let's say you bought your property for $3 million and now it's only worth $2 million. Well, guess what? Still got to pay that transfer tax, okay? This is ridiculous. You lost $1 million on that property, and now you have to pay a tax on it as though you're, making big bucks. You're not. You just took a huge loss, and then you got burdened with the taxes on top of it. This is the kind of thing that drives property owners out of the city, where they say, I don't want to invest there anymore. Or it creates a situation like what happened in Los Angeles, where it dropped the number of sales within the city by 80%. 80%. That's how much the properties, the transfer of properties within the price range that would have been hit by the tax declined. It is insane, right? So, I'm glad that this whole thing, it failed. I'm glad that the people of Chicago, at least the voters who were voting for this, they decided against it, right? This sort of thing, it may pop up again because, look, they voted in this far left-leaning crazy guy, right, who has pure socialist tendencies within him, right? He hates business, and he obviously has no common sense. I've seen some of the stuff he's talking about in terms of criminal justice, which seem insane to me, right? But I don't live in Chicago. So for those of you who do live in Chicago, put down in the comments what exactly you think. If you think that this mayor's proposal was a good idea or a bad idea.